readers, welcome back to the LA Reads podcast. We're your hosts, Abby
and Leighton, and this is episode 8.
And the third episode in the SJM 6 weeks of SJM.
Yes, first ACOTAR episode.
I'm so excited.
Yes, we love ACOTAR so much. I think a lot of people. Well, actually, what do you think? Do you think more people have read ACOTAR than Throne of Glass?
Oh, yeah. ACOTAR,
okay, that's what I was thinking.
I feel like ACOTAR is super unique because especially right now, reading is becoming like a thing, like a more like popular, cool thing
it's so
to do.
trendy.
Yes, and I feel like ACOTAR has been the book series that like has been getting people into reading, and it's like the number one recommendation on TikTok for people that are wanting to get into reading. So I feel like way more people have read ACOTAR than Throne of Glass.
You're so right, because why have I seen every celebrity under the sun be picking up ACOTAR all of a sudden?
Oh my gosh, who did I see this weekend? Do you remember Caitlyn from
The Bachelor?
Yes, her!
I saw that, and I saw Olivia Holt was reading it, and Shay Mitchell was reading it as well. And they're making all these jokes, and I'm like, oh my gosh.
Like, they all,
crazy.
As if it's like the coolest thing ever that these celebrities are reading these books. I'm like, it's really not that exciting. And it has nothing to do with me, but I love it.
Yes, I do love it. And they're posting all about it. And they're like, oh my gosh. And to me, I'm just like flabbergasted that there's people who still haven't read it. So I'm like so excited when I see people picking it up. I'm like, yes, join.
So freaking true. Okay, well, before we jump into this episode, did you want to just briefly recap what you read this week?
Oh, I do. Because somebody needs to sue me or something. Because what I've been reading is a crime.
Oh, no.
Because it's anything and everything but ACOTAR and what I should be reading.
I feel like this is becoming a theme for us.
It's whenever I'm required or asked to read something, all of a sudden my willpower diminished.
My issue is that my willpower to read at all is diminished, so.
That's true. You know, life is lifing hard right now.
Yes.
Anyways, I literally have to pull up my reading tracking app to see what it was. But I read The Brutal Prince by Sophie Lark.
Oh, okay.
The Perfect Fit by Sadie Kincaid. Between Love and Loathing by someone.
Are these romance or fantasy books?
Brutal Prince is dark romance. Perfect Fit is dark romance. Between Love and Loathing, it's almost like a HGTV romance.
Fun.
I read To Be Claimed by Willow Winters, which is dark romance, Pucking Wild, which is a sports romance, and Wild Love by Elsie Silver.
we were heavy in the romance this week.
Yeah, it was. I think that was almost 6 books. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Dang, I read 6 books this week. None of them ACOTAR.
Okay, wait, actually, question though, because I feel like I'm interested and I feel like a lot of people would be interested too. When you say you've read 6 books, is that like physical copies you have read them, or were you listening to a lot of those?
It depends. So, Brutal Prince, The Perfect Fit, Between Love and Loathing, I read on my Kindle.
Okay.
To Be Claimed and Pucking Wild, I read audio, and Wild Love, I read physical.
Okay, cool.
So,
love that.
Quite the split we have going on there.
You'll be so proud of me. Guess what I got this week?
What?
I got Libby.
Oh, shut the front freaking door.
Yes, I finally went and got a library card, but it's so nice because, I went and got a library card at the Provo library because there's a tiny, it's like the tiniest little, it's like a chilled, there's no real, library for Vineyard. Mm-hmm. So I went there and they're like, oh, well, you'll have to pay, $120 since you're not a resident to get a library card here. And I was like, oh, I don't want to do that. And I was like, I just want it for Libby. And she was like, oh, well, if you're just wanting it for electric use, then it's free. And I was like, oh,
yeah,
great.
Right? Give me the number.
Yeah, I was like, awesome. So, I mean, they still give me, a physical card, but, I can't, check books out. But I was like, I don't care.
Wait, that's so great because
I'm
Libby
so
is a game changer. Your reading speed, you're reading 3 books a week, you're reading 5 books a week now.
Yeah, I'm excited to be able to have audio. So anyways, I got that, but I haven't read anything on it yet, but I have that. This week I read Binding 13 and Keeping 13 from the Boys of Toman series.
Stop.
I really liked them. I thought they were really cute. I think that was my first, I haven't read a ton of YA romance.
Yes.
So that was an intro, and then also I feel like literally all my romance books are all comedies or like not super deep. So and that one is deep. So
yeah, that one is emotional
heavy.
damage.
Yeah, definitely heavy. So I mean, I really like them. I don't think I liked them as much as you did, but I still like them enough to like want to read the rest of the series.
Yeah,
I'm super excited for the one that she's coming out with. Literally like next week, isn't
Taming
it?
7, April 16th.
Okay, yeah. So for us, that's next week.
Gibbsy and Claire.
I'm so excited.
Yes.
Anyways, so yeah, but I think those were the only 2 books, and then I started Wild Love, but I've like barely gotten into it. So
I'm excited to hear your thoughts on that one.
I know, I'm excited. But anyways, okay, I think we're ready. Are we ready?
Yes. Before we start, we need to do our spoiler warning. So this podcast episode will have spoilers for all of ACOTAR, even though we are only going to be covering ACOTAR, ACOMAF, and ACOWAR.
Mm-hmm.
Be prepared for what do you call a Court of Frost and Starlight?
ACOSIF. No, wait, that's Silver Flames. ACOFAS.
ACOFAS. Whatever. The other 2 books, be prepared. They probably will be spoiled. We also will be making references, most likely, to Throne of Glass as well.
Maybe, yeah.
Yes,
we'll see.
I will do my best to always say something before if I'm going to say something related to Throne of Glass, so you're prepared. But
yeah. Honestly, I thought that I would have more like overlap things that I want to say, but now based off of my notes, I think I actually might not have Throne of Glass thoughts, but maybe they'll come as we have conversations.
Yes, I think I have 1 or 2, but I'll be sure to say something before.
Dope. Okay, let's do it. I had a thought first and foremost. We're going to start with the Court of Thorns and Roses, because I feel like this format worked out well for us last time. So, like I've said before in previous episodes, I read all of the Sarah J. Maas books like last year. So, like, it hasn't even been a year since I read all these books for the first time, but Court of Thorns and Roses was the very first SJM book I read.
Really?
Yeah, and so I read it, and at the time I was like, this is the greatest book ever
I've ever read.
I was like, this is amazing. I was like, what is this like adult fantasy like world? I was like, this is so thrilling. And now rereading it, I reread it like 3 months ago in preparation for her newest release that came out in January, and I was like, oh, this is actually quite bad.
I would say the same thing, because I really enjoyed the whole ACOTAR series. However, I do not think A Court of Thorns and Roses is a great depiction of how good the rest of the series is.
It is truly mind-boggling, the difference between A Court of Thorns and Roses and then ACOMAF. Like, what?
That's so true, because I think a lot of people's least favorite in the series is probably ACOTAR. Yeah. And a lot of people's most favorite is ACOMAF, and they're literally right next to each other.
Oh, but the difference is night and day. Also, I didn't catch this the first time I read it. Honestly, I don't think I would have even caught it unless I would have seen it on TikTok. I didn't realize that A Court of Thorns and Roses is a Beauty and the Beast retelling.
Are you hold your freaking horses? Because why was that the first thing on my notes? I saw that and I was like, you're lying to me. There's no freaking way. Also, Abby can testify, I am not a Disney kid, so I don't know if I've ever actually seen Beauty and the Beast. However, Belle and the Beast end up together, right? And that's supposed to be, Belle is technically Feyre, and the Beast is technically Tammy.
Tamlin?
Yeah.
I hate that you just called him Tammy.
Oh, I love calling him Tammy.
I prefer the word tampon, but sure.
Yeah, you'll hear both. I'll probably say it all.
Oh my gosh, when I saw that on TikTok, I was like, no, it's not. And the more I thought about it, I was like, okay, yeah, I guess. But I was like, I did not catch on to that for some reason.
I feel like that's what she went in with plans to do. And then within 200 pages, she's like, never mind, not gonna happen.
But I have no idea. But also, okay, rereading it though too, I feel like it's also just a really good first book in a series, because chapter 2, it's going. Like, you have the first scene of like her like hunting the wolf or whatever, but like within chapter 2, you're like, things are going, Tamlin comes and gets her, and I'm like, okay, at least it was like fast moving.
Yeah, arguably, I would say the most boring part of the book is actually the middle.
Yes.
Like, because
when she's at the spring court.
Yeah, she kills the wolf. She goes to the spring court. All of that's really interesting at first. And then it kind of hits the stalemate until she goes under the mountain. And then it picks up when she goes under the mountain.
Also, I will say, Feyre has absolutely no personality in ACOTAR. Like, absolutely none. Her inner monologue is so boring.
I feel like I'm definitely in the minority here. However, I feel like I've never quite related or, seen what everybody's talking about with the Feyre hype.
Yeah.
I feel like I didn't get a lot of her personality until all the way into A Court of Wings and Ruin.
Yeah.
When everything goes down there. So I don't know what it is, but I would say she's not my favorite SJM FMC.
I like her, but she's definitely not my favorite either. But she's definitely not my favorite in ACOTAR. I'm like, this woman has absolutely no personality whatsoever.
That is true. I 100% agree. I have a couple thoughts.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
A couple brief thoughts before my 3 major crimes that this book does.
Okay.
First, just a fun fact that I want to circle back to at the very end of ACOMAF, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
But let's just note now that Rhysand's first words to Feyre are, "There you are, I've been looking for you."
Yes.
Which I feel like I would not say I'm the best at predicting plot twists and things like that. I don't think I'm particularly better than anybody else, but I think as an avid reader, there's just some things that when you hear it. When I saw this mystery character the first time I was reading it several years ago, and that was the first line I saw, I was like, don't even try. Like, I know exactly where this is going. Oh, yeah.
The first time I read it, which also I think that reading ACOTAR last year was kind of like my intro to like becoming a more avid reader and like picking up on stuff like that. So I feel like I was not like practiced in the avid reading this, but I definitely like when I reread it a couple months ago, I was like, wow, he is in it a lot more than I thought. Like it went right over my head the first time I read this book. I was like, Tamlin and Feyre all the way. Like, so when I read like ACOMAF for the first time, I was like, wait, what?
Because I think correct me if I'm wrong, but the first time he says that is at Calanmine, or whatever it's called, and we don't get his name, I don't think. Or if we do get his name, we don't get his relation to the Night Court.
No, you don't get his name because, and you don't know who he is. Like, you don't know him at all.
She describes him as like, I think Feyre is like, oh, this is the most beautiful man I've ever seen.
Yeah,
tall, dark, and handsome, whatever. And then we don't realize who he is until he visits the Spring Court and they have the glamour on Feyre and whatever, and then you figure it out then. So when she was trying to sell to me like, oh, this random beautiful stranger and those are his first words, I was like, you are not subtle in the slightest.
That's so funny.
But
also, wait, just side note, because also in that scene he also calls her Feyre darling, and I saw this theory, which also Sarah J Maas has flat out said in an interview. I saw the clip once where she was like, the last names are not important. Like, she's like you will never know what Rhys's last name is, but I saw all the theories that were like, what if his last name is Darling, and that's why he calls her Feyre darling?
I saw that too, and I was like, okay, people, we're stretching it. Probably not.
We just really want it to be really extra romantic.
Yes, I applaud you on the creativity, because sure. Anyways, another thing that this one just gave me a good cackle in it is because in that same kind of sequence at Calanmine, Feyre, this is the first time she's feeling kind of jealous of Tammy because he used to go have his sex ritual of sorts with.
What the fetch is the Great Rite? I literally am so baffled by this concept.
Great question. I feel like it was just a plot device to be like, ooh, this could be kind of steamy.
But it absolutely is not mentioned by anyone. Like, Feyre brings it up to Rhysand, like, in Miss and Fear or whatever, and she's like, do you have to do this? Like, it's okay. And he's like, no. Like, why would I do that?
But then when Tammy's all upset because Feyre ran away, I think by next Calanmine or the Great Rite or whatever, and then he makes Lucian do it with Ianthe.
Yes.
I was like, oh, okay. But anyways, she is very jealous, and so she storms inside, and she's like, I'm going to go to my room. But then she realizes that's what Tamlin told her to do, so she's like, I'm going to go downstairs, and her reasoning for going downstairs is she wants cookies.
Is that really what it is?
Yes, she's like, I need a midnight snack. I'm going to go eat some cookies. It's like 3 a.m. Like, and it's one of those things where that's when Tamlin runs into her and bites her for the first time.
Yeah.
And then another thing that's just crazy with SJM It's just like the amount of description she goes into, like smells and things like that. Because they all have heightened abilities, they're usually able to like scent fear, scent. You know what else they can scent? When they're really in the mood.
Yeah.
So he bites her in the neck like a vampire. And
also, this is what has me dead is SJM writes multiple scenes like this where she's like then like with like biting, and I'm like, why is this a thing? And why like why am I like why do we think this is attractive? And as a reader, I'm like,
I know. And he bites her in the neck, and then he's like, first she's like, oh my gosh, he's gonna hurt me, and then she's like, wait, this feels kind of nice.
How I don't understand.
I don't get it either, but I could not stop laughing at, you knew SJM, or I'm assuming that she wanted this scene to happen, and she was thinking in her head, she's like, Feyre's gotta get downstairs somehow. What is the best way to get her there? Answer: cookies. That's what's gonna do it for us.
What a good way to go about that. That has me laughing so hard. Okay, Calamite, like the Great Rite is like what happens like when he has to like basically go have sex with someone, one of the acolytes, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'm so confused by that whole thing. Isn't that also where the like the stags come in? Like they also sacrifice a white stag during Calamite?
I have no idea.
I
did not remember
I know that
part.
they sacrifice like at some point they sacrifice a white stag for like during one of the, but I can't remember if it was like the summer solstice thing or if it was Calamite, but I'm pretty sure it was Calamite. That's like one of the only few things that you start to see like, oh, why would like, that's a very odd like overlap between Throne of Glass. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really odd. And I know the reasoning for the Great Rite and everything is, oh, he needs, to get his, what he needs to do the forbidden dance so that he can replenish the soil or something.
Like Earth takes the energy or whatever. And you're like
this does not feel connected in the slightest. I would not be surprised if it was all a myth just so he could get it on.
I'm so confused. Surely so confused.
Anyways, very out of pocket, but
Continuing on.
And then just one other thought before we get to Under the Mountain, because that's just when the crimes begin.
Yes.
Is when Feyre leaves, he puts a glamour on her family to make them think that she's at her aunt's house, right? Yeah. But then Feyre inevitably returns when Rhysand shows up and spooks him, and she goes back, and Nesta, it didn't even work on her. She's like, oh, you're back from Fairyland? And she's like, oh, you mean my aunt's house? Our aunt's house? She's like, yeah, no. But it worked on Elaine, and it worked on her dad. And maybe it's just me. I don't think I ever received an explanation as to why Nesta was like, oh, girl, yeah, you're back. And like, Nesta's being Nesta. Oh my gosh, is it something really obvious?
No, it's not, but I just had a thought, but I don't think I can share this thought without spoiling something else. Okay, but I can, if you've read all of the series, you'll understand in, oh gosh dang it. This is a theory that we'll have to talk about later when we're not talking about ACOTAR, but for the sake of this, there is a part in Silver Flames where Nesta gets a tattoo. Her and Cassian do. And you know what I'm talking about?
Vaguely, yes.
The 8-pointed star tattoo.
I do.
I had a thought about the 8-pointed stars and all of that. Anyways, and I'm wondering if it has something to do with that.
I wanted to make note of that, and we'll touch base on it in our Silver Flames Frost and Starlight episode for sure, or maybe that we'll have to wait till Crescent City.
I have a very big theory on the 8-pointed star, but that's going to have to wait till Crescent City. So put a pin in that.
Yeah, you heard it here first. You must tune in to the next episode.
Know that what is going on in my brain is baffling.
But I just saw that, and I was like, I don't catch on to theories well. I know I'm not great, so I'm like, maybe there was an explanation to this, and I just didn't catch on to it.
No, they never explained. She's just like, she just didn't work, and you're like, what?
Nesta doesn't care about Feyre, well, as of right now, and things like that. So she's like, oh, hey girl,
and maybe we just like bypass it because she's like, I don't know, because we're like, she's so strong-willed that it like didn't work, and you're like, but there's got to be another reason.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Anyways, from there, we move to Under the Mountain, where, okay, I believe correct me if I'm wrong. No, this is right before she leaves for Under the Mountain, and she's talking to Alice.
Yeah.
Right? And Alice finally divulges what the requirements are to break the curse or the blight, whatever. Yeah. And I just couldn't get over it. I was like, why does this have to be so oddly specific? It was like, you need to find a mortal woman to fall in love with you. But that mortal woman must hate fairies. But she must hate fairies so much that she must have killed them. But she can't just love you, but she must say it out loud with the words, I love you. And you're like, I get it. But why are there all these
we were really taking the Beauty and the Beast element and multiplying it tenfold for sure.
Shut up. That is Beauty and the Beast, isn't it?
Yeah, because they have a curse, but they can't tell her what the curse is. But it's like, but literally all the curses is like someone, like a fair lady has to like come and fall in love with him and tell him that he loves her, or that she loves him, because he's like a beast, and that's not supposed to happen. Anyways, yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't get over it.
That's the Beauty and the Beast part.
Because it felt like I'm not going to think of the right word, but like, the stipulations or whatever just kept going on. And I was waiting for her to be like, but she also has to be a brunette with 2 sisters. And her name also has to be Feyre. And she must know how to, and it was getting so oddly specific. I was like, SJM, we get it. Stop.
You're like, we're good.
Couldn't do that. But then we get Under the Mountain.
Yes.
And this is crime number 2, but it is ranked as essentially top tier because you know where I'm going with this. But the freaking riddle. I could not get over it because once again, I do not applaud myself for being good at predicting how things are going to go. And or riddles. I hate puzzles. I'm terrible at puzzles. I'm terrible at riddles. Tell me why. I read the riddle for the first time and I said, the answer is love. Within seconds. I was like, and I couldn't get over it. Out of everything you could possibly choose, you chose love.
Okay, listen. Okay. Not all of us are smart like you are.
I couldn't do it.
Okay, some of us didn't get the riddle, all right? Some of us didn't realize it. Some of us literally sat there for like 10 minutes giving ourselves time and thought, I don't know what it is. I'm going to continue on.
Stop.
Okay? Some of us aren't as smart as you are, okay?
Okay, I really want to get like Kendi and Alyssa, which are 2 of our friends from college. I want to read them the riddle and just give them a timer of like 3 minutes and ask if they can solve it.
It'd be so funny. I would love to see it.
Yeah, because I think they could.
Yeah, I don't know what was going on in my brain, but it did not compute. I was like, wow, I don't know what that is. Once I heard it, I was like, you're kidding.
But she was, SJM really leaned into the Disney thing.
Yeah, we were really
true love.
It was a little much. The Under the Mountain stuff also, okay, the Under the Mountain stuff is weird to me too because it happens over the span of 3 months, which like I'm glad that she doesn't like drag, like, okay, obviously this in and of itself, the fact that it's 3 months drags out a lot, but I also feel like she does a good job of being like, I'm not gonna add unnecessary scenes to like cover that time. It's just gonna be like, another month has passed. Give it like 1 scene for like per month, and she's like, perfect. And I was like, at least I appreciate that I didn't feel like I was reading about Under the Mountain for basically half the book.
Yeah.
That would have been so boring.
I've also seen people, because the timeline of this book was really interesting to me because we read Throne of Glass recently and we had a couple discoveries on the timeline there. So I thought, I better brush up on my timeline to see what's going on. Yeah. People were really upset because she always says like, I was under the mountain for 3 months. And people are like, no, you were under the mountain for 2 weeks, or not 2 weeks, 2 months, 1 week, and 4 days. Let's be honest here. I was like, whoa.
How do you even know that?
Because they said her traveling to the mountain took 4 days.
Okay.
To get there.
Okay.
Or something like that.
Sure.
And then we obviously have a month in between each task. So task 1 to task 2 is a month. Task 2 to task 3 is a month. But then obviously the last task is when the curse is broken. So that's 2 months. And then she's there for exactly 1 week before her first trial.
Oh.
So 2 months, 1 week, 4 days.
Yeah, that was not mathing correctly. That's funny. That's hilarious.
Which I'm like, I don't know why we have to be that specific, because if I were SJM2, I'd be like, yeah, it's like 3 months. You know, we don't need to get specific with it.
Gosh dang it. Okay, I have a theory, a thought.
Oh, okay.
Are we ready?
Yeah.
Okay, so we were briefly talking about this before, but there is a line while she's under the mountain that Amarantha says to Feyre, and she says to Feyre, she's talking about her, like, Feyre's name, and it says an old name / from our earlier dialects, and there's other parts too that we'll get to that I'll kind of talk about briefly too, but I've always theorized, and I've also seen other people theorize, that Feyre, like the Archeron sisters' mom, is half Fae.
Yes.
And when I read it, when I was doing my reread a couple months ago and I saw that line, I was like, dang, like, you know, if it was from an earlier dialect, maybe she would be like half Fae, you know, so then she would know those like older names, something like that. But that stood out to me. And it doesn't really mean a whole lot, but it just was like the fact that like she talks about how Feyre's name is from earlier dialects. I was like, intersecting.
I've also seen things that potentially her mom was a witch. Or something along those lines, because there's this one-off line that is describing the bed, and it's made out of ironwood, which apparently is really prevalent among the witches in Throne of Glass. And so they were saying, oh, maybe she's some sort of witch. However, I agree with one of these two, because we also see that both Rhysand and Cassian recognize that Feyre and Nesta are their mates while they're still human.
Yeah,
before
like, or they
turn
have
Fae.
like signs or like feelings that are like towards it. Yeah.
And I heard a lot of people saying on TikTok and things saying this is really uncommon. You're not really supposed to know while they're still human, but if they have some sort of blood that makes it so they're not human, it would make more sense.
And it also makes sense why they were able to become Fae in the first place. You know what I mean? Like the cauldron didn't make them Fae, it just accelerated them already being demi-Fae, you know, accelerating essentially like their drop.
Because we also see the mortal queen get made Fae, and it backfires.
Yes, which granted is because Nesta stole from it. But still, like, I don't know. I think that there's definitely a lot more to her mom. And because her mom is mentioned in Silver Flames, which we'll touch more on when we get to Silver Flames, is really interesting to me. And anyways, so that stood out to me. I'm like, an earlier dialect of the Fae, why would Feyre's mom know that? Yeah, like know a name from an earlier dialect. And of our earlier dialect is what Amarantha said, so of the Fae.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think there's also a line in ACOTAR too where Tamlin is like, your mom didn't tell you about us.
Oh, I totally remember
like,
that.
Why would her mom tell her about you?
Yeah.
You're like, do you know her mom? Like, I don't know. Like, there's just like weird things like that where you're like,
I've also seen things that we read that Feyre's mom kind of saw Elaine as somebody that she could marry off. She saw Nesta as kind of a social weapon, and then she did not care about Feyre at all. Yeah. However, then she's the one that goes to Feyre on her deathbed and says, I need you to take care of your sisters. You need to promise me. I've seen a lot of people say, what if it wasn't a promise, but if she's Fae, it was actually a bargain? And that's why Feyre feels so insistent on keeping this promise, is because it's actually a bargain, which I went back and I was like, maybe she has a tattoo or some sort of something, because traditionally you get a tattoo anytime you make a bargain, correct?
Except for I think that's a night court thing, not necessarily, because we only see bargains happen between people in the night court, not between, and like residents of the night court, and not between anyone else. So really? I don't know.
She makes a bargain in ACOWAR, right, with Bryaxis.
Yeah, but he's in the night court. Yeah.
So
I don't know. I should go back about bargains, because I think those will be very important. We'll touch back on that on Silver Flames, maybe.
Yeah, I was like, oh, that's so interesting. I had never thought about that.
Yeah. Did you have any other thoughts about ACOTAR, though? I think that was kind of my last thought.
Oh, yes, I had one more thing, but before we move on to that, just another side note. I also was thinking about her parents. Papa Archeron, nameless. You know how we know, Throne of Glass spoiler, nameless is the price.
Okay, I thought this too. I forgot about this.
Just not that I think those are connected. Just I was so thrown when I realized they didn't know the king's name in Throne of Glass. I realized I don't know Papa Archeron's name either.
No, we don't. I also, and Sarah J. Maas has said multiple times in her own books, like from her characters, we talked about this last time in Throne of Glass, is names are very important. Like there is value and power in names. So you're like, why do I not know his name?
Yeah. So I was like, oh, interesting. However, my final thought, and this is the third crime, that was the third strike for me of this book, is how Amarantha dies, right? Amarantha is killed by Tammy. Tammy rips out
I hate how you keep saying that.
rips out her throat with his teeth, right? And I feel like prior to this, and maybe this was just me reading into it, but everybody was putting up this like really big fight saying, oh, if the curse is broken, then maybe Tamlin would be strong enough to kill Amarantha. And they specifically were singling out Tamlin.
Yeah.
Tamlin could kill her. And we know Rhys is the most powerful High Lord.
Yeah.
So in my head at first, I'm like, I don't know why Rhys couldn't do it. Maybe it's something specific to Tamlin, because we obviously know Amarantha liked or wanted to be with Tamlin originally.
Yeah. And
so I was like, oh, what could it be? And so I was ready for this big, like, show of power. You know what he does? Bites her. Bites her with his teeth. I'm like, could somebody not have just, like, stabbed her in the throat with a knife? That would have the same effect, right? It's not like he used his magic or anything. No, he just made her bleed to death.
Pure anger, and you're like, that was it? Why did no one do that sooner? Like, I'm just so confused by how... I'm so confused how all of the High Lords and all of these people without their magic were able to be captured and brought in under the mountain. Like, I'm just so baffled by this whole concept.
Yeah, because we obviously know a lot of them, I'm sure, can fight and things like that without their magic. So I'm like, somebody get a knife, stab her in the throat.
Yeah, like, Rhysand in the same way, like, granted, like, feel bad for him. Like, he's been through a lot. He sacrificed himself so that she wouldn't, like, ruin his court or whatever. Like, I get that part, but also, like, he is very capable of fighting without his magic. So I'm just so confused.
Yeah.
Why we didn't just pull a Lysandra real quick and just in bed, you know?
Yeah, a little, and it was a little bite. I'm like, you bit Fabra on the neck not that long ago, but now you bite Amarantha and she dies.
There were signs early on that Tamlin was the absolute worst.
Yeah, I couldn't get over it, but I was like, anyways, you're forgiven because I know how good the next book is. So,
like, it's fine. So yeah, ACOTAR is definitely not my favorite, but I definitely think that it is such a good springboard for just everything else. But it is baffling how bad it is compared to the rest of the book series.
I do think she almost made this more of a... not that it is a comedy, but it's a little bit more on the comedic side than the rest of the books. The rest of the books are pretty serious.
Certainly more cheesy. It is not very deep.
Yeah, so I think it is a good book. It gets people hooked. It's interesting enough that you want to read the next one, and then you can be invested there.
Yeah.
But I am surprised when people are reading, and they're like, this book is the best book I've ever read. And it's ACOTAR, and you're like, oh, hold on. Buddy.
Give it a sec. Speaking of, okay, do you have any other thoughts about ACOTAR?
No, that's all of it.
ACOMAF. I was so torn because now I have reread ACOMAF and ACOWAR 3 times, 4 times, 3 times, and I switch back and forth between which one I like more.
Yes,
but ACOMAF has grown on me the more I read it. The more I read it, the more I'm like, dang, that's a pretty freaking good book.
Yeah.
And the only thing that I don't like about it is that there's a lot of lull time in between scenes, like bigger parts. It's like there's a lot of lull time between like her getting brought to the night court and then coming back, and then the wedding and then coming back, and then there's a lot of lull time between them like being in the night court and then going to the summer court. Like there's just like a lot of like space in between each of like the bigger like plot points or scenes.
Yes.
But other than that, I'm like, this book is pretty dang perfect.
I think I know. Well, correct me if I'm wrong. When we did our 5-star reads, you said ACOMAF potentially could be a 5-star read, or it's just short of a 5-star read for you, right? I was thinking the same thing. I don't know if I would quite put it up to 5-star read, but maybe I would put it up to 4.5, 4.25-ish.
Yeah.
However, the reason it's not there, and for me, it's more of a 4-star, maybe 3.75-star read, is because I had the hardest time, and I still have the hardest time because I've reread it, I think 3 or so times, with the first 100, 200 pages where she's still in the spring court.
Oh, yeah.
And she's just a shell of herself. She's so unhappy. She's depressed. Tamlin is insufferable. Feyre's insufferable at that time.
You want to kill Lucien and Ianthe.
Yeah, it feels like nothing is coming to fruition. You're watching the same scene on replay for about 100 pages.
Yeah, I agree.
And I wish she would have shortened it to maybe 40 pages or something, which I know it's really hard because you have to build up enough motivation that her leaving is a big deal and it's justified.
Yeah.
But I can't with the beginning pages. I think everything after is great.
Yes.
But...
Well, and it's like, then she starts getting brought to the night court, you know what I mean? And you're just like, please stay here. Stop going back. Please just stop this. I want you to be in the night court.
Yeah.
And you're like, please stop going back. Let's just get this over with, please.
She keeps saying, take me home, take me home. I'm like, girl, do you not realize you're oppressed?
But let's say, though, that, like, she has no personality. But the second that she's with Rhysand is, like, when we finally start to see Feyre have an actual personality.
Yes. That's so true.
She becomes definitely a lot more bearable when she is with Rhysand because I'm like, oh, there you are. You have depth.
Speaking of the timeline in general, I also did a little bit of digging on the timeline for this, which, let me pull that up really fast wherever it is. Okay. So at the beginning, we find out at the end of ACOTAR when Rhysand physically recoils when Feyre's trying to say thank you for helping her with the second trial, that they're mates. He sniffs, gets the smell, recoils, whatever, disappears. We're like, okay, you're mates. That's very clear as day. Yes. Then we know 6 months later is when she talks to the Suriel, and the Suriel is like, oh, your mate is dying or whatever.
Yeah,
and she's like, my what?
Yeah.
And she finds out for the very first time. So that is 6 months apart. We know that Rhysand ghosted Feyre for 3 months.
Yeah, between basically, he doesn't have any contact with her for 3 months between when they get out from under the mountain and her wedding.
Yes, exactly. Because he explains, even though she's my mate and I knew that if marrying Tamlin was going to make her happy, I was going to let her do that. But then she kind of has her panic attack at the wedding. He comes, she goes to the night court for a week. She comes back for a month, goes back to the night court for a week, comes back. And this is when Tamlin seals her inside of the house and she has her panic attack.
So then she gets out.
And then she goes to the night court. So if you add all that math together, she's in the night court for less than 2 months before she finds out that Rhys is her mate. And we know she goes to the cabin for, I believe it's 6 + 4, 10 days or something like that. And then it's chapter 54 and 55. So she fell in love with Rhys in under 2 months. I know that was a long-winded way to say that, but under 2 months.
2 months is really a long time for some of these for some of these SJM characters. Yeah, I think that might be the longest.
Yeah, comparatively to Kale and Selena, 2 months.
Well, and like Rowan and Ayla, all of them. You're like, okay.
Still, for some reason I think it's comparable to real life and just. Well, I can't speak.
I was going to say, I was like, you and Justice were going to get married after like 3 weeks of dating.
Not 3 weeks, but I did date my husband and for 4 months, and then he proposed.
Okay, but you started talking, yes, he waited 4 months to propose, but you guys started talking about marriage like a month in.
No, it was like 2 months in.
So you're literally...
I did not think about that. I take it all back. Feyre is totally justified in all of her thoughts. I didn't think about that for a second. 2 months is adequate time to fall in love with somebody.
How many weeks were you dating before you told Justice that you loved him?
Well, he told me he loved me, and I said, whoa, buddy. And then I was like, I'm not ready for that. And then not even like 2 weeks later, I was like, okay, I'm ready.
And when was that?
Maybe a month and a half or something like that. I hate how Abby just undermined everything I just said. Long story short, never mind. The point is null and void.
I'm laughing so hard.
I'm I'm sweating now. I feel embarrassed.
That was just so perfect. We're over here judging all these fake characters, and we're like, this isn't real life.
Yeah, it's like, oh my gosh, girl, take some time.
If it makes you feel better, my parents met July 4th and got engaged August 15th. So, there's worse out there.
Surprisingly, that does make me feel a lot better.
Okay, good. I'm glad that makes you feel better. Anyways, besides the point, did you have any other thoughts?
I did.
Because I have a couple, but they're more theories and they are jumping around a lot, so.
Hopefully they're a little bit more well thought out than that one, because that one was a little crazy. Anyways, awesome. Let me go to my ACOMAF section. Mm-hmm. Also, with them being mates, mm-hmm. I was just thrown, because usually when in SJM history, when you know somebody is your mate, you get really protective of them.
Yeah.
And I know she wanted to show the difference between Tamlin and Rhys by saying, oh, Rhys lets her be her own person. He lets her go to the front lines of battle if she wants. I mean, the amount of times this woman uses the word your choice in this book is a crime. Like, Command F, this PDF version of this book, 50 plus. Easy.
You're really drilling in that plot point.
However, he had a series of things that he did after where I was like, wow, this man is not giving a flying flip about her safety. Because we see her first. Well, he uses her as bait for the adder, right?
Oh, yeah.
He's like, oh, I just wanted to see who would come kidnap you if I left you alone. Excuse me, sir. This is your mate at this point. What do you mean you wanted to see who would kidnap her?
Yes.
And then he's like, oh, by the way, the ring is with the Weaver. You should go get that. And I know people are going to say, oh, it's the ring that his mom left. So the person that he would marry had to get the ring. Yeah. And there's a lot of lessons because she had to learn not to panic. She almost died.
Multiple times.
And then after that, he's like, oh, you did so good. You know what we should do? We should go visit the bone carver in the prison. The prison full of people who have been there for an eternity and
are the worst creatures of all time.
Yeah, and the bone carver literally gives a physical chill to everybody because he's so scared. Yeah, you should go visit him. That would be good.
Let's go. I'll go with you. No worries.
I'm like, oh, yes. It was just a series of back to back to back. And I probably got those in the wrong order. But long story short, they all happen in ACOMAF. Where I know his prerogative is it's your choice, Feyre. But I'm like, wait, can her choice be life? Can we choose, maybe to bypass some of these things?
Yeah. It's interesting, though, because I feel like from Feyre's perspective, we see him being this more, open, accepting person. But it's interesting to see how he is in Silver Flames from Nesta's perspective. Because in Silver Flames, he is, overly protective, not telling Feyre things,
yes,
you know what I mean, which also I want to get into when we do Silver Flames as well, but so it is interesting when you say that, because I'm he literally was doing all these things and trying to basically hide that he knew that they were mates or whatever, and is trying to give her her choice. But when you see it from someone else's perspective, it's not that way, and you see him be overly protective.
Yeah, because even in ACOWAR, I believe she's like, you know what? I want to fly because I want to fly on the front line of the Illyrian battle, whatever.
Yeah.
Lines.
Yeah.
And he's like, you know what? I think that's a really dope idea, Feyre. And I'm like,
go for it.
What do you mean? It's a really dope idea.
Yeah, I don't know. That's super interesting. I wonder if that's just from Feyre's perspective, or if that's how he actually is, or if it was just because he was trying really hard to hide the fact that he knew that they were mates. I don't know.
Or maybe in Silver Flames, there's another factor at play that maybe causes some of that. But yes, I remember in Silver Flames, he's so protective of her. Yeah. He's pretty much, you go in your room, you stay out of this, you need a rest.
Yes, yeah. So I don't know, really interesting. That is an interesting thought.
Anyways, I was thrown. I was like, holy cow, this man is just whatever she wants to do.
Also, I had a thought, and this is such a literally the most minuscule thought, but obviously, we leave this book absolutely hating Tamlin. Tampon for sure, 110%. And also just, the plot twist at the end where he, basically betrays them, and you're like, what the frick is wrong with this man? He is wrong in the brain. There is something so off about him. And the fact that he would hurt Feyre and just, all of it is just, so weird to me. But I did see someone talk about this on TikTok, and I thought it was really accurate, because in this book, I'm pretty sure it's in ACOMAF, Rhysand tells Feyre that, like, the reason why they're able to have, you know, the borders for Valaris and things like that is mostly because he has to let out parts of his magic. Like, he has to, like, release parts of his magic in order to, like, be contained, or else it will consume him. And I've seen that people have talked about where part of the reason why Tamlin basically, like, goes crazy, or, like, went crazy over Feyre, is because he wasn't releasing enough magic. He was, like, trying to contain it all because he hates his magic. He hates who he is. He doesn't like who he is. And and Feyre even makes a comment about that in this book, where she's like, Rhysand loves his people, loves being in this role, and Tamlin hated it, like, despised it. And I not to, like, justify his actions because they are not good, but it is interesting to think about it in that way of, like, he obviously was not, he must, like, I wonder if he just, like, wasn't, like, using his magic enough, not getting rid of it enough, and it's, like, basically consuming him at this point, you know?
Yeah, I feel like there had to be some other factor than just love, because I also saw a theory where people thought that maybe Tamlin having the stone heart curse or whatever made it that he was actually incapable of love.
Oh,
or something along those lines, which in that case, if he's incapable of love, there's no way he's doing all of this just to get Feyre back in the name of love. I mean, there's definitely other factors of, like, pride. She left him to go for his arch nemesis that murdered his family because he murdered, you know, the whole backstory and everything like that. But I would be interested to know if there was another, like, exterior or whatever you want to call it, factor playing into it, because we know at the end, when he's with Hybern and everything, he won't even accept the fact, like, once he smells the mating bond, that they're mates. Yeah, he's like, it's a lie.
He is, like, sick in the head. Like, you're like, what the frick is wrong with you? And even Lucien at that point is like, dude. Yeah.
Come on.
Like, Lucien is like, what the frick is wrong with you? And that's the moment in the cauldron scene where Lucien, like, goes up to try and help Elaine, because he's like, I am going to help them. Like, you are being ridiculous. And then we all know what happens when he goes and helps Elaine. But yeah.
Which, perfect segue, because I feel like we need to just unpack this ending scene for a second. First things first, Throne of Glass spoiler. A lot of people say that who don't like Sarah J. Maas, because I talk to a lot of people who read, but Sarah J. Maas is not their favorite person, and she's obviously one of mine. Yeah. A lot of their criticism of her is a lot of her books are carbon copies of each other, or copy and paste. They say a lot of characters are really similar across books. Yeah. A lot of plots. I never agreed. I was like, no, you're totally wrong. As somebody who rereads my favorite books 5, 6, 7, 8+ times, I know what I like, and I don't mind rereading it again, so I don't think I ever looked for it. However, having just read Throne of Glass, this ending scene is very, very parallel or reminiscent of end of Empire of Storms. Yeah. Specifically with the part where we know in Empire of Storms, spoiler, because I'm going to spoil the absolute biggest part, so be prepared.
Be prepared.
We know that we find out that Rowan and Aelin snuck out during the night and got married.
Oh, yeah.
During that, and then we literally have the same case scenario happen here, where it's like, oh, we snuck out in the night, and now I made her my high lady.
Yes.
And I read that, and I was like, whoa, that was, like, so parallel.
Yes.
That I, like, had an out-of-body experience and forgot which book I was reading for half a second.
Yeah, you do have, like, little things like that where you're like, that was quite literally the same exact thing, just do different fonts, and you're like, okay.
Yeah, and then we obviously see Elaine and Nesta come into the mix, which, random side thought, is when Nesta goes into the cauldron, she obviously goes in second. Yeah. But it always says, like, you know, Nesta pointed one finger at Hybern or something.
Yeah.
I was looking at fan art because I was curious, and everybody has her literally pointing, and why did I, when I read it, I thought she flipped him off. Because it was like she pointed one specific finger.
The first time I read it, I think I thought she flipped him off too. But now I understand. After reading Silver Flames, I understood that was like her symbol of, like, I'm coming for you. Yeah.
But I loved it because we know when Feyre is in Under the Mountain in her first trial and she's fighting the Mittengard worm, it says, like, she kills the worm, looks up at Amarantha and like points and doing a vulgar gesture or something. Yeah. So she kind of flipped Amarantha off, and then Nesta did it to Hybern. And so I was like, I'm ready for Elaine. I'm ready for her moment.
Yeah, like who's gonna be the person that Elaine's about to just basically say, I'm coming for you, and
probably
kill?
Lucien.
Aww.
Or something. Not in like, I'm gonna kill you way, but in a like, mind your own business kind of way.
But I love that man so much.
Anyways, the main thing I want to unpack here is obviously we see Elaine go into the cauldron first. She gets turned Fae, and the first words out of Lucien's mouth are, "You're my mate." Immediately, where I'm like, oh, buddy boy, what is going on here? And now I know there's a lot of theories speculating about who Elaine's going to end up with.
Yes.
Because I know you mentioned maybe it hasn't been confirmed, but maybe it's just pretty well known that the next ACOTAR book is going to be about Elaine.
Yeah, or Azriel. Like, we hope that that's kind of like the story.
Yeah. And I feel like there's 3 potential love interests that are out there for her. We have Azriel, Lucien, and Tammy.
I hate that. Stop calling him Tamlin. I'm going to murder you.
Which I was curious to get your thoughts on it, because I was trying to do some deep dives to figure out if I could guess what was going to happen with Elaine and her mate / maybe not her mate /
You really want to hear my thoughts? Because I will go off.
I will also go off. So you go first. Yeah.
Okay, I'll go first. Fine. Okay, here's my thing is that so many people are like, Azriel and Elaine are meant to be together. Now, I'm going to quote a couple things, and I'm going to completely botch which books they're from. But there's a lot of things, and there are a lot more things in Silver Flames that we can talk about later. But to me, Elaine is an adult. She quite literally is the middle child. And okay, fine. Lucien, like, kind of had a blurting moment and was like, oh my gosh, you're my mate. But may we recall, like, prior to him, like saying that, he goes up to her, he like covers her with like, he like takes off his cloak and like gives it to her, like he's like trying to like help her, like he just was being a good guy. And I feel like that if he wouldn't have said that, she would have 110% given him a chance and been very drawn to him. But he just in the moment was like very like, whoa, you know. But then I also I cannot stand the fact that she is quite literally an adult and we baby her like no other.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And to me, she acts like a little baby and a brat, especially in ACOWAR, and then again in the rest of the books as well, of like ignoring Lucien, like not talking to him, things like that. And I'm like, great. If Elaine and Azriel end up together, I would love to see it, whatever, but I will not even, Azriel and Elaine end up together, love to see it, great. But I will not even stand for Elaine and Azriel until I see Elaine just even have a conversation with Lucien and give him a chance.
I 100% agree, because now that I think about it, in ACOTAR, how old's Feyre? 18? 19. And Elaine's older than her. I'm going to guess, I don't know, 2 years older than her, something like that.
Yes.
So she's 21. So at this point, she's got to be like, what, 22?
Yeah, I think she's like 22, because I remember Nesta talks about it in Silver Flame. So she's like, oh, I'm 24, 25-ish. Yes,
which, speaking as 2 22-year-olds right here, she needs to buck up and have her conversation.
Exactly. And she gives Lucien not a single glance. And also, just my biggest pet peeve, too, is that everyone is bashing on Lucien. Like, after Mist and Fury, everyone bashes on Lucien so much and gives him such grief and such a hard time. And I'm like, this man needs a break. He literally cannot find a place to call home to save his freaking life.
Which is so funny, because we find out he has so many connections everywhere, which I will elaborate on here in a second. But with Elaine and her mating situation, I'm very curious, because first things first, I think it could go a lot of different ways. But one of them, I think a lot of people are skeptical that it's going to be Elaine and Azriel, because the odds that the 3 bat boys end up with the 3 sisters just feels maybe like too much.
Yeah.
For the time being. And so I'm really curious to see. Let me find it here. We've never seen somebody reject the mating bond. And I feel like that could be a place where this is going. Maybe she ends up rejecting it with Lucien and then ends up ending up with Az, because that's who she actually loves. Yeah. Which I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, because I know you definitely know this better than I do, but we know Lucien's mom is obviously married to Baron, right? And she did not love Baron at any point, but they were mates. And she loved Helion, right? And Helion is Lucien's dad.
Yeah.
So I think he could be very sympathetic to that situation of having a true love elsewhere. However, your mate being somewhere or someone else, because I think they also confirm later that being mates doesn't mean you're in love. It means you're equal in power, and that's
and
pretty
that
much it.
That you are going to create the strongest offspring. It's like, it's with like children.
And it's like mind. Love is the bonus part of it. It's not the actual main part of it, which a lot of people theorize because we see Azriel at this time when Elaine is turned, is ash arrows all in his wings, on the verge of death, is not very powerful. And so it would make sense that she wouldn't match up with Az, because if they're matching powers at that time, his power level was really low. So maybe she was originally supposed to be with Azriel and not Lucien.
Yeah. But okay, sorry. This crosses over into Silver Flames a little bit, but it's fine. There's a bonus chapter in Silver Flames. You've read it, right?
I'm not sure. Elaborate.
Okay. There's a bonus chapter in Silver Flames where during winter solstice that Az is at the townhouse with Elaine, and he gives Elaine a necklace, and they're about to kiss, and Rhysand interrupts them, and Rhysand is like, "What the frick are you doing?" And Az is like, "You two have one of the sisters, like, why wouldn't I have one of them too?" And he's like,
the audacity!
Yeah, the audacity of this man, okay? But here's the other thing too that's really interesting to me is that, so he says that, he flat out says, like, in fewer words of like, you and Cassian have one of the sisters, like, why wouldn't I? But there is Elaine says, and I don't remember which book it's in, she's like, I don't want to give Lucien a chance because I don't want to be with a guy that feels like he's obligated to me, like he owns me. Oh,
interesting.
Yeah, and so she says that about Lucien, being like, well, I don't want him because he just feels like he owns me, like he is obligated to me and like to be mine, and that's not what I want.
Yeah.
But it's funny because that's exactly what Az said. And Lucien hasn't said anything of that sort. She just is assuming that because they're mates, but it was actually Azriel that flat out says, like, well, why wouldn't I get her? You guys have one of the sisters, so why wouldn't I?
That is a terrible way to put that.
No, I'm not even joking. Read back through the bonus chapter, and it sounds terrible.
Holy cow.
Yeah, there's another theory, but I don't want to dive into it this time. We'll talk about it in Silver Flames, but I definitely think that my one hope for the next book is that, yes, it's about Elaine and Azriel, but we know how in Silver Flames it's like, it's about Nesta and Cassian, but Nesta is like the main focus.
Yes, and the Valkyrie.
Yes, exactly. I'm really, really hoping that the next book is about Elaine and Azriel and Lucien, but the main focus is on Azriel. Because I think that his story is a little bit more interesting and has a little bit more to it than, say, Elaine's. But I don't know. There's a lot to unpack there for sure, but I just think that she hasn't given Lucien a chance. Until she does, I'm not going to believe that her and Lucien aren't going to end up together.
Well, I was also thinking about it because having just read Throne of Glass as well, we obviously, spoilers for Throne of Glass, we obviously know that Rowan has a mate prior to Aelin, Lyra. I got it right this time, Lyra. And we find out that Maeve has practically concocted this bond. It's fake. Using her mind power, she made Rowan believe that he had a mate when he actually didn't. And obviously we know other people with mind powers, aka Rhysand and Feyre, and they confirm in these books that there are other people like them. We see the creepy evil twins, I forgot their names, in ACOTAR.
Yeah.
Right? They also have mind powers. So we know people are out there. So I'm like, would she go to the lengths of making their mating bond fake of sorts?
I don't know.
I don't think she would, but it was an interesting thought because I know she does sometimes have a somewhat repetitive writing style.
Yeah.
So I thought that could be it. And then I was also randomly thinking to the drawers. When obviously Rhysand, when he's having visions of Feyre, sees her paint the 3 drawers. And Feyre paints the night. She paints flames for Nesta and then flowers for Elaine, which a lot of people think means the spring court, which means she's going to end up with Tamlin, because they also say specifically she looks really good in the spring court and she looks really out of place at the night court.
They say, but I think that's just implying also the day court, because if Helion dies, Lucian is ending up the High Lord of the day court.
Yes.
Which is where she would belong. But here's there is a riddle. There is a riddle of sorts that the Book of Breathing tells everyone in the room in ACOMAF. It's on page 554 if you want to follow along, but it is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines, and it says, life and death and rebirth, sun and moon and dark, rot and bloom and bones, hello sweet thing, hello lady of night, princess of decay, hello fanged beast and trembling fawn, love me, teach me, sing me. And when I reread this, I was like, it's really interesting that every single line has 3 things. So you first have life and death and rebirth, which and then you have sun and moon and dark, rot, bloom, and bones, and then the last one. But those first 3, you're like, okay, you could almost like look at those and find
Feyre,
Nesta, Elaine, like one of those represents one of them.
Yes.
And then the last line says, hello, lady of night, comma, princess of decay. And when I made a theory about this on TikTok, and people were like, Feyre's not Princess of Decay, that's Nesta, but I said no, because Feyre is referred to as Princess of Carrion multiple times. There's even one of the section headers, one of the parts headers is called Princess of Carrion, and if you Google what Carrion means, it means decay. So there's a Lady of the Night, Princess of Decay. So that to me is Feyre. Hello, Fanged Beast, which would be Nesta, and Trembling Fawn. Which is Elaine is referred to as a fawn all the time.
Yes.
And then the very last line is love me, teach me, sing me, love me. Feyre just wanted someone to love her. Touch me. Nesta's book is definitely very much like fire, and it is a very physical book. And the last line is sing me. So I am so confused. Sing me. And Azriel is a shadow singer.
Yeah, and doesn't he... Well, correct me if I'm wrong, because I feel like what I'm about to say is going to completely contradict each other.
No,
however,
okay.
I swear at a point in time I heard him say, like, his shadows sing specifically for Elaine. But then I think also in Silver Flames, he says when he's around Elaine, like, the shadows and darkness around him actually disappear.
No, they hide. They they recoil from when they're around Elaine. They sing for when he's around Gwyneth in the bonus chapter.
Oh,
yeah.
And
they
I know
hide.
Sarah J. Maas has always said, "Oh, there needs to be balance in everything," and like the light and the dark is definitely a balance of sorts between Elaine and Azriel. So that's just another.
Yeah, but it's just
there.
So it's so confusing because there's so many things that are like pointing to her being with Lucian, and you're like, oh, they say that she doesn't look good in the night court, and like, it would make sense that like she is very spring and bright, and like it makes sense that she'd be with Lucian. But then you have this,
but the first
it literally
3 words,
says "sing me."
The ones that represent Elaine, if it was rebirth, day, and
the rebirth, sun, bloom, and then
sun
trembling
and bloom.
fawn. Would be the ones that I would guess are representative of Elaine. And then you have fawn, and then the last thing, love me, teach me, sing me. And you're like, sing me? I don't know. And then what does that mean? I don't know. But it just was interesting that I felt like every single one of those represented one of the sisters. Why would the last one be sing me? So I'm like, there's so many contradictions. This is like the most confusing love triangle I've ever seen in my entire life.
On top of that, I've seen people say that the name Tamlin is Welsh. And something that Sarah J. Maas is really fond of is using mythology within her writing. So somebody looked into like Welsh mythology and found out there's the story of Lancelot. And Lancelot has 2 love interests, and they're Gwennifer, if I pronounce that right, and Elaine. And we know, obviously, Azriel has Gwen that a lot of people ship him with, and Elaine and everything. So I don't know what that means. I mean, I would have to look into how that story actually ends, if she would actually
ends
mirror
with him with Gwyneth. In Lancelot chooses Gwyneth, yes.
Interesting. See, I'm like,
if I remember the video correctly that I saw, because I know exactly who you're talking about that made that video.
And maybe she just got the names inspired by that story and not necessarily the story itself. But there's just so much that I'm like, oh.
See, but then that makes me feel like, we think that this love triangle is going to be between Elaine, Lucien, and Asriel, but maybe the next book is going to be about Asriel and his love triangle with Elaine and Gwen.
Or something. Which I think I would prefer that, but that's so hard because that leaves Lucien out of the loop, and I feel like that's the main, elephant in the room that needs to be addressed.
So maybe it'll be from Asriel's perspective. I mean, I think it'll have Elaine's perspective as well, and Lucien will be involved. I don't know. Gosh dang, we went on such a long tangent about this, but I did have one last thought. I'll share it in this video because I do have a theory of what the next book is going to be called, and I do think that the next book is going to be somewhere along the lines of A Court of Fawns and Shadows. So fawns, because Elaine's is referred to as fawns and then shadows, but that's not very creative, but maybe it is.
Yeah, you never know though. Those, it's so hard to guess what the actual names are going to be. But
anyways, sorry, that was such a long tangent.
Let me hurry and review and see if there's anything else that I wanted to touch on. Oh, there was one other thing, and this is less of a profound thought, and thank goodness, because we probably need a rest after all those theories. However, there's just a moment that was very reminiscent of one of my favorite series that I know is one of your favorite series. Is obviously we see in the Spring Court, they're required to do the tithe.
Oh, yeah.
And Feyre has to kind of sit by Tamlin and be I think she can't speak very much, and he has to kind of play bad guy, and she just
has to kind of sit there and let him do it. She's just told to be sit there, support him, you can't do anything.
Yes. And so another book that I love that this kind of happens in is the Selection series. They call it The Convicting. We obviously see America hand out her jewelry to the criminal so he can pay off his debts. In ACOMAF, we see that the water wraith comes up. She says, I have sisters. We live in a lake that doesn't have any fish. We have nothing to give.
Yeah.
So Feyre gives her jewelry.
Yes.
To give to Tamlin to pay off her debts. So I was so curious. So I looked up the publishing order just to be what came first?
Yeah, what did come first?
I don't know super specifics. However, because I can't remember which book of the Selection it's in. I think it's in the Elite, but it could be in the One.
It's in the One.
The One. So the One was published in 2015.
I was going to say, Selection had to have been first.
Yes. And then I think ACOMAF was published it was 2014, and ACOMAF, I think, was published in 2015. So it was
interesting, but they were that close together?
Yes, back to back. So you heard it here first. This is confirmed. Sarah J. Maas is a Kiara Cass fan. We just know it.
They were that close together, though. I wonder if they genuinely had the same thought. They just, because those writing times would have overlapped with each other.
Yeah, because the writing process.
Yeah, the writing process would take so long that Kiara Cass would have by the time that book was published, Sarah J. Maas was probably already done with her draft of ACOMAF.
Yeah, which
great minds think alike.
Yeah,
great minds think alike.
I just read it and I was like,
that's the same thing.
Also, another random thought is we also see in this book, as I mentioned before, Feyre gets wings, which is super dope because she's super cool and she can do whatever she freaking wants.
I know.
However, this just threw me back exactly into Empire Storms / maybe Queen of Shadows. I don't know.
Yes.
But I think Dorian and Feyre are very similar in the fact that they both have this kind of untapped magic that they don't really know what to do with, but they can pretty much do anything they set their mind to. Both of them woke up one morning and were like, shape-shifting, that's gonna be the goal for today, and they both just do it. And they're like, oh,
it's gonna be the one.
Yeah. I was like, holy cow. I thought that, and it reminded me exactly of the scene of Your Eyes Are Brown.
Yes, from Throne of Glass.
From Throne of Glass. And so I love that because Dorian's one of my favorite characters.
Except for this is where Feyre bothers the crap out of me. And sorry, this is leewaying into ACOTAR. We can bounce back to ACOMAF if you're not done with all your thoughts.
Oh, no, I'm done. I'm
ready.
Great.
Fantastic. I cannot handle this. In ACOMAF, we have her literally fight the Aider, whatever the frick is called, in the end of ACOMAF. protecting Valaris. She goes to the Summer Court with all of them when Summer Court in ACOWAR is under attack, and she goes and helps, and she's using her freaking water wolves, being a bad A, killing all these people covered in blood, and she's like, I have no problems with killing. I am this powerful bad bee, and no one is going to stop me. And then all of a sudden, at the end of ACOWAR, when they're actually in war, she's like, Rhysand, I don't think I can do it. Like, I don't want to do it. And he's like, no worries, you can sit back. And I'm like, no, you cannot.
Which I'm 100% with you, because I had the same thought, because she also in ACOTAR has to kill the 3 fairies, and last one's Tamlin. She ends up killing 2 of them. She is the reason she's in the whole depression for the first 100 pages of ACOMAF is partially due to the fact that she can't cope that she killed somebody.
I know.
And then literally later in ACOMAF, she's pulling things left and right. She's killing everybody left and right.
She's super manipulative and very honestly, it's almost cruel towards the twins, the mind reading twins at the beginning of ACOWAR, and to Ianthe, which she deserved. But you know what I mean. But you're so you're telling me that you all powerful, every power controlling human, Faye, whatever, decided, oh, but this war thing, yeah, not my vibe. So I'm going to sit back. I'm going to go to the cauldron, and then I'm basically just going to watch as everyone does all of the work.
I also have an issue, and maybe it's less of an issue, and I just wish it had happened. But my favorite part is training. I love seeing especially female main characters really grow into their power and become super powerful. And we get kind of thoughts where it's oh, I'm training with Cassian, but we don't really see a ton of it.
No.
But then she goes from I'm so powerful, I'm burning handprints in the table, I can't pick up a glass without shattering it, I'm accidentally breaking things left and right, to she walks into the Court of Nightmares and she's like, I grabbed every single person's mind with my hand and I just held it there and let them know that with one blink of an eye I could crush all their minds. And I'm like, you can't even hold a glass of water without breaking it.
We jumped from being very incapable to very capable very fast.
And then we see her fighting with her water dogs and everything like that. And to me, I'm the only preface we've had before this is she'd like to splash Rhys. She's like, oh, you're being kind of silly. Splash. Oh, by the way, I can make a water dog that's going to run.
Water wolf.
Water wolf? What? Wow, water dog. Water wolf that's gonna go and it's gonna drown people, and I'm gonna shoot water at the adders, and then I'm gonna freeze them, and then they're gonna fall from the sky, and they're gonna pull.
I just literally can't handle.
Where did she learn this?
I don't know. I remember seeing a timeline somewhere. Someone posted it where they were the training timelines of everyone, and you're Nesta is the only one that has a longer-ish training. Her training I think equates to 6 to 8 months or something like that, and you're okay,
that's it,
fair.
Dang.
Not great, but better. But like you said, at this point, at the end of ACOMAF and through ACOWAR and stuff, I really only think that Feyre is in the Night Court for 2 months in Mist and Fury, and then only a couple more months in Wings and Ruin. You're you learned all that in 2 months?
Yeah, I heard somebody say, and I could be getting this couple months off, but the beginning to the end of the war, so I guess the beginning of the war would probably be at beginning of ACOMAF to end of Wings and Ruin is months. It's 7 to 9 months or something like that. Oh. If I remember correctly. Okay. I can't, they just said it was all less than a year for sure. Yeah, and they're this war has been going on for 500 years or something like that. You're telling me we resolved it all in 7 months?
Problem solved in 7 months, and you're okay. Yeah, I literally just could not stand the fact that she does nothing, and the fact that in the final war, when her and Amryn go to the cauldron basically just drags Feyre around to watch her sisters do what she should be doing, and I'm
yeah, let's be honest, even Nesta did something.
Nesta and Elaine were holding that war on their backs.
Remind me what Elaine did?
Elaine is the one that kills Hybern. Well, Hybern.
Yes, I did know that. Yeah, but
that's what she does. Well, that's really all she does. But she also gets captured, so that's
a big thing.
But she's the one that literally kills the King of Hybern. So you're okay, love little Elaine with Truth Teller.
I also I know we've talked about this with writing our own books. The importance of combining characters so you have a smaller character cast. Yeah. because sometimes people are not needed. One of these characters that I wish just did not existed, or maybe was combined into somebody else so they were a little bit more complex, was Ianthe. To me, she was such a throwaway character. She served no purpose besides
it
like
just pisses
evil.
You off.
Her like motive was evil. I was like, couldn't even give me some. I mean, she was kind of a social climber, so I guess she wanted to look the best. Obviously, she makes the moves on Reese, and then she makes the moves on Lucian, and she ends up killing the Suriel and all that. But I'm like, what did she do? What was her purpose besides to be a wench?
No, really, I think her whole purpose was to be a wench.
Yeah.
To literally just have a character to hate.
Yeah.
Which I love. I love having an emotional punching bag of a character, but I just wanted to literally kill her, and I'm so glad that she is no longer there with us.
I know. When everything was happening, I was like, just the whole time, why are you here? Come on, girl. Somebody
Get
else,
out.
please. Yes.
I literally cannot handle. Also, you were mentioning, sorry, this is such a turn, but I noticed this quote. So, you know how you were saying that Feyre had wings and she started to do trainings for like flying?
With Azriel.
Yeah, with Azriel. There was a quote when Azriel and Feyre are talking. I'm pretty sure it's when he's about to tell her the story of what's the little
Miriam.
There, yeah.
Miriam.
Miriam. Yeah. Anyways, whatever. Doesn't matter. But during the training, he tells her, he's like, oh, like when I'm having a hard time, I just tell myself, you are immortal. You are very hard to break. And the moment I read, like when I was doing my reread and I read that, I said, that's going to come back into play. I said, that's going to be I will not be afraid moment for Azriel. Yes. And I am just already predicting that you are immortal, you are very hard to break, or just the part of like you are very hard to break is 110% going to be brought into Azriel's like perspective so fast in the next book.
Well, I'm so interested, hopping back to, I guess, like this next book with potentially Elaine and Azriel. Yeah. I think they're both characters where we genuinely just don't know that much about them. Like, I think somebody was saying that if you really look at it, we have maybe 5 paragraphs that explain Elaine.
Yeah.
And that's like it.
We literally know nothing. And other than she got her heart broken by a human.
Yeah. LMAO.
And she thinks that she's still going to be human. And in not Silver Flames, in Court of Frost and Starlight, Amren calls her out and is like, you're not becoming human again, girlfriend.
Yeah. And even with Azriel, I've seen a lot of people have different theories to his relationship with Mor and the way Cassian factors into that and everything as well. And a lot of people are saying that I don't think he actually loves Mor at all.
No.
Like, I think it's more of either he's worried about her or like there's a secret at play and he's concerned about her and he wants to be this kind of shoulder for her to lean on. But there's probably a lot more that he knows, especially because he's the spy master, that I think he has a lot better idea of what's going on.
Yes. And he talks about it. He said the shadows talk to him. Like, the shadows tell him things.
Yeah.
Shadows know all. Also, this is such a side note, I forgot to say this too earlier, was because they do talk, Rhysand explains as a little bit in ACOMAF to Feyre. And there's a part where he says that, like, he explains how, like, as the shadows are different, like, that he can't really explain how, because I think he's trying to teach her how to winnow. And he's like, Az is on a whole other level. He makes no sense to me. His powers are very different.
Yeah.
And there's something, and even Rhysand is like, maybe it's from his childhood, like being locked away, because he had been like locked away, like basically in a dungeon in the darkness.
Yes.
And so I had this thought of like, I wonder if Az wasn't born a shadow singer, but he became one because he was locked away.
Say the word made. He was made!
I think that he might be made in that way. Because, I forgot about this, because this was my thought. I forgot about this theory. It came back to me. In ACOWAR, there is a part where, when after Elaine gets captured, the cauldron like sings a song or whatever.
Yeah.
And it wakes Nesta, Amren, and Feyre up, and they all come out and they're all like, what is going on? And Azriel is there too. Azriel wakes up and he's like, what is that? Like, he can hear it. And
you're like, all these made people.
Yeah, and Amren's like, oh, the reason why can no one else hear it? And Amren's like, oh, it's because you're not made. Like, everyone that can hear it is made. And everyone like turns to Azriel, and Azriel is like, oh, well, like, my shadows are telling me. But I'm like, You would be really good at lying. You would be really good at hiding something that you don't want people to know.
Yes.
Anyways, it was very interesting. And the fact that he has truth teller too, you're like, I think you are made. I think you are made, and that's going to come into factor later. Anyways.
Wait, I would kind of eat that up. I would love that.
I have not a single clue what that's going to apply to at all, but love.
That's how all these theories work. You're like, and what else besides that?
Like, I don't know. How that applies to the main plot, not a single clue, but love. Yeah. What other thoughts do you have about ACOWAR?
I only have, I think, one or two other ones.
Okay.
And they're more general thoughts because I'm just interested on your thoughts of Throne of Glass spoilers.
Okay, I'm ready.
Aelin and Rowan's romance versus Feyre and Rhys's, because I think it's very different in the sense that Aelin and Rowan, and maybe it's just due to the series having more books, but like Heir of Fire, they're enemies.
Yeah.
And then Queen of Shadows, which I think is the sweet spot, is they're know that they're more, but they're not really acting on it yet. And then obviously in Empire Storms, there's more. Mm-hmm. And so we get this whole Queen of Shadows book where it's like all emotional intimacy and no physical intimacy, really. Yeah. Where on the other hand, we have Rhys and Feyre, where Feyre's so scared to like communicate her feelings to Rhys that and she doesn't know that they're mates at this time. And so she almost like suggests like a friends with benefit. She keeps saying the word like, I need a distraction, like a physical distraction. Yeah. So we almost get this like physical sense before we get like a lot of emotional intimacy.
Not the like deep emotional intimacy. Yeah.
Which I think is funny because I prefer the slower burn with Aelin and Rowan. But I think a lot of people would argue that they like Feyre and Rhys a lot more than they like Aelin and Rowan. So I was just wondering what you think.
I feel like both relationships are really similar in the sense of they do eventually have a lot more deeper emotional connection than I would say like Nesta and Cassian. Like both Feyre and Rhysand, and then also Rowan and Aelin both have like things or lines or certain like conversations or things like the to whatever end and things like that like connect them more on an emotional level. So I think both of them have both of those aspects. They just came to fruition a little bit differently. Where, like, you know, Rowan and Aelin's came before they were physically intimate, whereas Rhysand and Feyre's, like, you know, things and emotional lines and stuff like that kind of came after. I'm kind of with you in the sense of I prefer the like drawn out, like longer burn, have little things here and there sprinkled in throughout, and you do get that a little bit with ACOMAF. You know, you have things sprinkled in and you're starting to feel the tension between the two and you're like, holy frick, just get together. But which I think is why people like ACOMAF, is because all of a sudden you get a chapter 54 and you have the like full on like blurt everything out, like say everything you feeling, this massive love confession that's pages long, explaining everything and connecting all this stuff. Like that truly is very emotional, and you're like, oh, love. Like this man is on his knees begging this woman and telling her how much he loved her, and we didn't even know all of this before, you know. So I think it's really different, whereas like Feyre and Rhysand was like, we had no idea about these things until he like confesses, whereas like with Rowan and Aelin it was like
kind of unspoken.
You already know.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I really like both, but I do see the differences in that. I don't know.
Yeah. By the way, that love confession, 12 pages.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, it's pretty long. Like, he goes through their whole, essentially retells everything they've been through.
Yes.
And how he felt in that moment. And you're like, love? But
I think what was missing for me, and when I say what's missing, I obviously love Feyre and Rhysand. So this is like choosing between favorite children. You know, I love them both.
Yes.
My favorite parts of books is just the tension, you know, which is why a lot of the times I love to read YA, fantasy and things like that, because they have to rely so much on tension. And I think in Queen of Shadows, that's the whole entire book. And because in ACOMAF, it's kind of this unknown where we're getting inner monologue, but it's unknown to each other. So they're not really necessarily acting on it right away.
Yeah.
I mean, they're flirting. We see him teaching Feyre how to write, and it's like, Rhys is so handsome. Rhys is so beautiful.
Tension for sure. They're in the summer court, and you're like, This man is jealous. Like, you know what I mean?
But it's just like a lot smaller because then you have the outburst of a love confession more so than like a, so when are we gonna do this? Because we obviously know.
Yeah.
But
I don't know. But I like both. I like that you can see the contrast because it is really hard when you're like, wow, I have, again, going back to this idea of like, wow, I just read the same exact thing, just different font. Like, you know, but when you look at it, you're like, okay, yes, they're very powerful. And I do like that her couples very often are like, okay, yeah, they're very equally matched in a lot of ways. They just are, but they're different. And they came to fruition in different ways. I don't know. But I like both.
Yes.
What were your other thoughts?
My very last thought, because I'm just silly and I don't notice these things, is just realizing what the differences are between books. I mean, obviously, we won't touch on Crescent City, but things how you mentioned before, like iron is not a thing in this book.
Yeah.
But then we also have Faebane in this book, and Faebane is not a thing in other books. Yeah. And ash arrows are a thing in this book, but I didn't have any mention of them in Throne of Glass.
The only weakness in the other books is iron, and this one, that isn't the case.
Yeah, and even with that, and even how, like, mating works across other books and things like that, I never taken the time to, you know, really look into it and figure out, like, where the similarities are and where the differences are. But I was wondering if you knew of any or anything that was super weird.
Do you think that if I close out of this, that it will keep recording?
I sure hope so. Oh, it still is.
Great. Awesome. Hold on. Hold that thought. Give me a sec.
You have a whole notes page or something?
Well, I did have a compare and contrast page, but... Oh, I did have... There are a couple. So, I have a list... Excuse me. Sorry. Give me a second. It disappeared. Hold on. ACOTAR. Okay. I had made a list when I was doing my reread. A lot of this was comparing to Crescent City a lot because that was like what I was preparing for. But this was a list of compares and contrasts that I had. Iron is a weakness for Fae in CC and TOG, but not in ACOTAR. Last names are used in CC and TOG, but not ACOTAR. In fact, the only two people that we know their the only people that we know their last names are the Archerons. We, for some reason, know Lucian's last name, which is Versara or something like that.
Yeah.
And Gwyneth is the only other person that we know her last name. Don't know why. Probably significant. Gonna be later. Both Rhysand and Aelin fight for a better world. It's quoted. And it's hinting that Eris is the same way.
But random side note, I love Eris.
Oh, I love Eris so much. We will touch on that in Silver Flames.
Yes.
Let's see. I had just said both Rhysand and Aelin are known to make plans that stop the hearts of people closest to them. Cassian makes a comment about Rhysand and Aquor. Oh, and then the feathered winged creatures, so like what Miriam and Draken are in ACOTAR, are called Seraphim?
Oh.
Draken's people, whatever they're called. Whatever Draken's people called, and they're called the Malachi or Malik in species in CC. They're called something different.
Oh, but they're similar.
But they're same thing. Feathered winged creatures.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, like what Hunt is. And then the old Fae language is used and known in all three worlds, but is uncommon and very few speak it in all of them.
See, I'm just so interested, like...
That was my list.
Because I think Sarah J. Maas, to a degree, I mean, obviously I don't think she can have the entire series, Crescent City, ACOTAR, and Throne of Glass scoped in her head prior to writing everything.
Yeah, no.
But I'm interested to see what, obviously they're in the same universe, like what the umbrella ideas actually are, like whether that's believing in the gods or what spans between each universe.
Yeah. No, also something that comes into play too is tattoos. Tattoos are amongst all of the books.
Which, by the way, Feyre has a back tattoo of the moon phases or something like that. Is that what it is? Yes. I mean, I probably butchered that. It's probably something a little bit more specific. Recording?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's probably something a little bit more specific, but it's the moon phases of sorts. But it's like every single one of our FMCs has a back tattoo.
Oh, yeah, they do. That's funny.
Yeah, Bryce does, Feyre does, and Aelin does.
And Nesta had the 8-pointed star on her back, but they accomplished their bargain. Her and Cassian accomplished their bargain, so it went away.
Yeah, I'm like, what? I'm like, is that just like a coincidence? Like,
I mean, I like the tattoo, so I don't mind.
Maybe SJM wants a tattoo herself, and that's where she would put it.
Tattoos. Have you seen her finger tattoos? They're really cute.
No,
I haven't.
Tattoos. But maybe she wants a back tattoo, and so she's like, okay, that's gonna be the thing. But I just thought it was weird.
That is super interesting. But yeah, that was my list of comparison contrasts that I had written down. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot more, but it is really interesting that there is a lot of different similarities and contrasts in part of the books. I don't know. Did you have any other thoughts?
No, I think that's everything.
I had one more theory that I wanted to share because I wanted to know your thoughts too. So we meet the bone carver. Oh, you had another thing?
I do have one more theory now that comes to mind.
So we meet the bone carver in ACOMAF. They go. Yes. Her and Rhysand go and visit the bone carver, etc., etc. Anyways, so when we meet the bone carver, and her and Cassian go and see the bone carver in ACOWAR. Yes. And they learn when they're visiting him that he is a death god. That is what he is. That's what he is defined as. And I don't remember who exactly says it, but they say that you can't kill a death god. They're quite literally already dead. They are death gods. They control death. And it is literally said that they cannot be killed. And it was also said when they were meeting the bone carver that the bone carver says that, like, before, the Fae were there, before their time. Yes. That the old gods could take form of anything. The wind, the mountains, the seas, whatever. And he specifically says that the wind tells him things. He's like, oh, I heard her name amongst the wind. He's baiting Cassian. He's like, Nesta, shares that he knows Nesta's name. Yes. And he's like, the wind told me, even though he's literally in a cave. But anyways, so I had this thought, and I want to hear what your thought is that we see the bone carver basically dissolves and dies at the end of ACOWAR, that he waves and says goodbye to Feyre, and dissipates in the explosion from the cauldron, whatever. But it was literally said that death gods cannot die. And then we also see that he says, like, old gods were able to take forms of anything, and he can talk to the wind. Besides the point, I just think that that he is not dead. And will that apply to the plot? I don't know, but we're hinting in the future books of this Coast guy, whatever, who is the bone carver's brother. And Coast Guy's potentially the new villain, or is hinting at it
in the new book.
In the new book, yeah, because we meet him in Silver Flames because he's the owner of Vasa. And oh yes. And so I'm wondering if the bone carver will come back into play because that was his brother. Like they are related, and death gods can't die. But do you think the bone carver's alive?
I can answer this question for you.
That was a really long-winded question, but
simple question, simple answer. Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
I mean, I didn't know any of that until just this moment, but you've convinced me.
Oh, I'm so glad. I'm so good at convincing.
But also, random side note, isn't Lorcan in Throne of Glass protected by the god of death?
Yes.
Which, is that the bone carver?
He's just a death god, but he's not the god of death. Yes.
Interesting. See, I don't know how all of that works or what the relation is.
Well, we don't really know either. We've already established that the gods are kind of confusing. We don't really know a lot of, and all the gods and the god systems and things like that are all different. I mean, you have the cauldron / mother in this world. You have Word is kind of like their higher power god situation, and also the gods in Throne of Glass. And then you have the Asteri, and then also the levels of hell.
Her chart thing must be off its rocker.
All right. But that was kind of my last thought. Everything else I feel like are things I want to talk about in Silver Flame. So do you have any last theories or thoughts?
I just had one thing that I wanted your input on because I was really curious because if you've watched our Throne of Glass episode, Abby asked me a similar question to this at the end of our Throne of Glass Part 1 video, I believe. But Feyre obviously dies in ACOTAR at the end when Amarantha snaps her neck. Yeah. She explains to the bone carver, she tells us that it's just darkness, and then randomly she sees this golden string in front of her. Oh, yeah. Which they originally explain is the bargain, and then later in ACOMAF, we see that they explain that it's the mating bond. Oh, yeah. However, I'm really curious because you asked me the same thing in Throne of Glass and said that Elaine saw a golden string, right?
Yeah.
And we were trying to guess what the golden string actually was, and I suggested I thought it was maybe the prophecy that she was holding on to.
Oh, interesting.
Do we think it could potentially be her mating bond with Rowan, and or maybe this wasn't the actual mating bond in this scenario and it was something that maybe connects both worlds together.
I would have to look back at the exact wording, because I feel like Sarah J. Maas is very particular on if things are connected, the wording is very similar. You'll see a lot of similarities. And she talks about, and I do believe that both of them in those moments when they do feel it, they explain it as this golden path or string that's like a tug, that's like a pull.
Yeah.
And, to me, I always just assumed that, for Feyre and Rhysand, it was their mating bond that she just hadn't, like, fully accepted yet. But at the same time, we do get explained that, like, there is kind of, like, a connection between mates and things like that, but we've never been said that it's a golden string like that between any of the other mates. So I'm wondering if maybe there is some sort of, like, overpowering god of some sort or power that is pulling these people together.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Maybe it is kind of the mating bond, and that's what the mating bond actually looks like internally, is connecting two people by a literal thread of golden string or power or something like that.
I don't know. I do have a theory, and I'm gonna go on this whole tangent in the next episode when we talk about Silver Flames, but I do have a theory about, actually, we're gonna talk about Crescent City. I lied. Sorry, you're gonna have to wait. But I do have this theory, this idea of a court of realms being created, and I'm wondering if there's just some sort of pulling these people together to eventually come together. I don't know, but that is very odd that they are both described as like golden strings, kind of like a tug and a pull.
And when does Aelin see the golden string?
Aelin sees it when she is pulled to help Irene in Assassin's Blade, and she is pulled to help Manon when Astrid is yelling at her for her in Queen of Shadows. I think those are the only 2 times. Maybe there's another one, but I can't remember.
I wonder if maybe, I can't confirm this. I would have to go back and reread it. But we obviously know Feyre's like almost dead at this point, and we know that Aelin is almost dead at the end of Kingdom of Ash. So maybe she sees something like that at that point.
But at that point, okay, wait, hold on, back up. Sorry, I'm backing up. In Feyre sees that when she's almost about to die.
Yes.
She sees this golden string. And does Rhysand say that he saw the same thing? This tug that he tried to pull her back with?
I don't know if he says he saw it, but I think he does say he tries to pull her back.
Pull her back?
With it, because when she's describing it, she's almost saying, like, she's in this tunnel, and, like, at the very top, she can see the High Lords looking down at her, and, like, the path to that tunnel is this golden string.
Yeah. Okay, and then in Assassin's Blade, when she has it with Irene, it's when Irene is gonna die, probably get killed by the guys that like come to her in the alleyway, and things like that. So basically, Selena was being pulled to help her in that moment so that she didn't die. And then it was the same thing with Manon. Manon was probably gonna die, and then she had that little golden tug to make sure that she didn't.
Yes.
So I have no idea what that means, but death does seem to also maybe have a tie to it. I don't know.
Maybe it's like life actually incarnated. I don't know, but
we're going deep.
When I go through Crescent City, I'll have to look and see if Bryce ever sees something similar, and maybe it's like a common theme. But I can't remember anything off the top of my head, so that would have to be.
I think that'll be a Crescent City discussion, because I do have a couple of theories of where Sarah J. Maas's books are going as a whole, and I think that maybe I have an idea. We'll talk about it later.
Yes, all the things.
All the things.
Holy cow.
Oh my gosh. I think that was kind of all my thoughts, though. I think everything else I just wanted to save to talk about when we talk about A Court of Frost and Starlight and Silver Flames next week. So,
yes.
Did you have anything else?
No, I think everything that we said right now, keep in mind, because we'll probably expound upon a lot of it.
Expound on a lot of it, but holy, I hope you guys enjoyed that. I know that was like a little bit of a bouncing around between all the 3 books, but I hope that you guys enjoyed this episode. Make sure that you guys follow us on all our social media. It's just LA Reads Podcast. We will be covering the rest of the ACOTAR series next week.
Yes.
And then the week after that, we will be jumping into Crescent City. We will be splitting Crescent City up into 2 episodes as well. So it'll be the first and second book of Crescent City the first week, and then Crescent City 3/theories for the entire SJM universe in the 6th week. So just so you kind of know what to prepare yourself for, because I know those books are kind of massive. So to give yourself time.
Yes.
Yes. But anyways, is there anything else?
No, I think you did such a good job covering everything just now.
We did great. Anyways, make sure you follow us, and we will see you all next week.
Bye.
Oh my gosh.